Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about success, most people immediately think of hard skills, degrees, certifications, coding languages, financial knowledge, technical expertise. These are the obvious tools for building a career. They're measurable, trainable, and tangible. They show up on resumes, in interviews, on LinkedIn. But let's pause for a moment and consider a powerful truth. The most life-changing achievements are often fueled by skills that don't come with certificates. Think about the ability to observe, not just look, but truly see the nuance in someone's expression, the unspoken tension in a room, the opportunity in a quiet moment. Observation isn't taught in schools, but it allows some people to read the world like a book, to anticipate needs, to adapt in real time. It's one of those subtle, ignored skills that separates leaders from followers, artists from imitators, and problem solvers from rule followers. Or take storytelling, it's dismissed as an extra skill unless you're in entertainment, but it's everywhere. Whether you're pitching a business idea, teaching a concept, negotiating a raise, or simply inspiring a team. People don't remember data, they remember how you made them feel. They remember your story, and those who can craft narratives, shape messages, and move hearts have a massive advantage over those who only know how to present facts. Now let's talk about empathy, the quiet powerhouse of human interaction. Empathy doesn't shout, it doesn't demand recognition. It just works in the background, making people feel heard, seen, understood. It's the secret behind effective leadership, strong relationships, loyal teams, and lasting influence. And yet, you'll rarely find it listed as a core requirement in job postings. That doesn't make it any less vital. In fact, in a world that's increasingly automated and impersonal, empathy is becoming one of the few things I can't replicate, and one of the most human advantages you can have. Creativity is another underestimated skill. People often see it as artistic fluff or something reserved for writers, designers, and performers. But in truth, creativity is problem solving with style. It's finding unexpected solutions, reimagining outdated systems, inventing what doesn't yet exist. The entrepreneur who disrupts an industry, the scientist who sees a pattern others missed, the leader who finds a better way to connect with their team, all of them are using creative thinking, the same kind of thinking schools often suppress in favor of memorization and repetition. Even humor, yes, humor, is a high-level skill that transforms interactions. It diffuses tension, builds bonds, and signals intelligence. A well-timed joke can be the difference between closing a deal and being forgotten. But no one puts sense of humor under key competencies, even though it's one of the fastest ways to win people's trust. So why are these powerful, life-shaping skills so often ignored? Because they can't be easily tested, scored, or standardized. They don't fit into spreadsheets, they don't come with certificates, and most of all, they take time to notice, nurture, and appreciate. In a world obsessed with speed and metrics, we tend to undervalue the things that grow quietly, but deeply. Here's the irony. Look at the most admired figures in the world. Leaders, artists, change-makers, even CEO. Strip away the titles, and what's left? A commanding presence, emotional resonance, creative clarity, and the ability to move people. That's not a resume talking. That's the power of ignored skills. These are the skills that help you stand out when everyone else is following the same script. They are the ones that allow you to rise when logic says you shouldn't. And they are the ones that give you staying power in a world that forgets fast. We often spend years perfecting what we're told matters: math, grammar, procedures, protocols. But the game truly changes when we start developing what actually makes us memorable: our voice, our values, our perspective, our human essence. So the next time someone praises a conventional skill, nod and appreciate it. But never underestimate what your so-called useless abilities can do. Because the truth is, ignored skills don't just shape success, they shape legends. From the moment we enter school, we are taught a very specific version of success. Sit still, memorize, repeat, score well, stay in line, follow the syllabus. From kindergarten to college, The system trains us to believe that intelligence is measured by how quickly we can solve equations or how well we can recall textbook definitions. The unfortunate result, a narrow definition of what it means to be skilled. But let's tell the truth that nobody likes to admit. The education system, despite all its noble intentions, rarely nurtures the full human being. It produces good test takers, rule followers, and obedient workers, but it often overlooks the quiet, powerful skills that shape extraordinary lives: curiosity, imagination, emotional intelligence, adaptability, communication, and self-awareness. A child who can draw vivid, moving images is told to stop doodling and focus on real work. A student who's a natural storyteller is asked to shorten their answers and stick to the point. Someone who's great at bringing people together, resolving conflicts, or offering emotional support is praised socially but told that these strengths won't help them in exams. These subtle signals get internalized. My skill doesn't matter, it's not valuable, I should focus on what gets me a grade. So year after year, we ignore the learners who shine in other ways, the ones who ask deep questions, the ones who can read a room, the ones who are wildly imaginative, or the ones who carry an emotional maturity beyond their years. Why? Because those qualities don't fit neatly into a multiple-choice test. This creates a dangerous illusion that only academic brilliance equals intelligence, and that if you're not topping the class, you're somehow destined to fall behind in life. But step outside of school and into the real world, and that illusion begins to fall apart. You realize the most successful people are not always the ones with the best grades. They are often the ones who mastered the ignored skills. The real world doesn't ask if you remembered the Pythagorean theorem. It asks, can you think under pressure? Can you inspire others? Can you handle failure with grace? Can you see what others miss? These questions are not answered in exams. They are answered in how we show up in relationships, in conversations, in creativity, and in crises. What makes this even more painful is that many students carry hidden talents that are never given space to grow. Some are intuitive problem solvers who could reinvent the way we build things. Some are natural leaders who could rally people around a cause. Some are empaths who could heal broken systems from the inside out. But because the system didn't reward them, they begin to doubt themselves, they shrink, they conform, and slowly they let go of the very things that made them special in the first place. In the race to standardize learning, we have forgotten that human beings are not standard. Of course, this isn't to say that literacy, numeracy, and discipline don't matter. They do, but when they come at the cost of creativity, emotional depth, or unique intelligence, we start producing professionals who can follow instructions, but not innovate. Workers who can meet deadlines, but not connect with purpose. Graduates who can talk about things, but don't know how to live through them. The saddest part, many people discover the value of their ignored skills too late, after years of trying to fit into a mold that was never made for them. And then suddenly, one day, they realize that their voice, their creativity, their people skills, or their passion was what the world needed all along. But by then, they've spent years apologizing for being different. That's why it's time to question what we've been taught to value. The education system may not prioritize emotional intelligence, storytelling, or imagination, but that doesn't make them less important. In fact, those are the very skills that will define the future. Because in a world changing faster than everywhere, AI can write code, solve problems, and even generate ideas. What will set you apart is not your ability to follow instructions. It's your ability to be fully human, and no test in the world can measure that. Whether we're talking about friendships, leadership, customer service, or public speaking, what truly lingers is the emotional experience we had with someone. That's the invisible thread connecting all human relationships, and that thread is woven from skills that are often ignored, dismissed, or devalued. Skills like empathy, listening, storytelling, compassion, humor, and presence. These are not the flashy skills you put at the top of your resume. You can't get a university degree in making people feel safe or understanding someone without them saying a word. But these are the very skills that create loyalty, build trust, and open doors that intelligence alone cannot. In professional settings, we're taught to focus on productivity, performance, and precision. But in reality, what makes teams work smoothly, what drives employee satisfaction, and what makes leaders truly inspiring are often the emotional and interpersonal skills that are treated as soft. A manager might know how to plan and execute a project perfectly, but if they can't read their team's mood, if they can't motivate, support, or connect on a human level, then people may follow instructions, but they won't follow with heart. In relationships, too, it's not knowledge but emotional intelligence that determines how deep or meaningful the bond becomes. Someone who listens without interrupting, who understands without judging, who communicates with warmth rather than cold facts. This person builds bridges others can't. These human abilities are not loud. They don't win medals, but they quietly build the foundation of our most important personal and professional relationships. Think about the most memorable teachers, mentors, or bosses you've ever had. They weren't always the most academically qualified or technically skilled, but they had a presence, a way of seeing you, of believing in you, of making you feel like you mattered, that ability to connect at a deeper level. That's a human skill, not a learned protocol, and yet it's often the one that changes people's lives the most. We live in a world of increasing automation. Machines can now write emails, analyze data, even compose music. But what they still can't do is feel. They can mimic emotions, but they can't live them. They can process language, but they can't offer real comfort, intuition, or emotional nuance. That's why human connection is becoming more valuable, not less. And the skills that create that connection are the ones we're still not teaching enough. One of the greatest myths is that success is a solo journey, that if you're smart enough, skilled enough, and determined enough, you'll make it. But that's not how the real world works. Opportunities come through people, support comes through people, growth, trust, leadership. All of it involves the ability to form authentic human bonds, and those bonds are made not by perfection, but by connection. Even in competitive fields like business and entertainment, it's often not the most talented person who gets chosen. It's the one who people remember, who people feel something around. That feeling doesn't come from credentials. It comes from invisible skills, making eye contact, telling a story, making someone laugh, showing up when it matters, expressing gratitude, offering empathy. Small things that leave a big imprint. Ironically, many people spend years trying to stand out with hard skills without realizing that the real power lies in their human touch. In a crowded world, what cuts through the noise isn't just competence, it's connection. And the people who build that naturally, without trying to impress, but just by being deeply present and emotionally intelligent, end up creating lifelong loyalty, influence, and impact. So, while you're chasing your goals and sharpening your talents, don't forget to nurture the skills that seem small, but are truly massive. Your ability to connect, to care, to listen, to speak from the heart. Those may never be measured by a test, but they will be remembered by everyone you meet. Because at the end of the day, people may forget what you said or did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's the power of human connection, and that's the power of the skills we often ignore. In a world constantly evolving, where industries shift overnight and job titles change as fast as technology, the one thing that remains constant is the value of transferable skills, skills that move with you, adapt with you, and grow with you no matter where you go. And interestingly, most of these are the very skills we are told not to focus on, the overlooked ones, the non-essentials, the ignored skills. When we think of career progression, most people imagine a ladder, a vertical path that requires specific knowledge for each step. A lawyer needs legal knowledge. A doctor needs medical training. A coder needs programming languages. All true. But what happens when a lawyer needs to inspire a jury? When a doctor needs to earn the trust of a frightened patient? When a coder wants to pitch a new product to investors, suddenly it's not just about the hard skill. It's about communication, empathy, creativity, presence. These are the ignored skills, and they are the bridge between competence and true impact. What makes them powerful is that they're not limited by industry or job description. A great communicator can succeed in law, teaching, sales, or filmmaking. Someone with strong emotional intelligence can thrive in management, healthcare, customer service, or even sports coaching. Creativity, adaptability, collaboration, these don't belong to one profession. They belong to people, and people move, people grow, people reinvent themselves. In fact, if you look closely, the people who excel across fields, the ones who transition from acting to business, from sports to politics, from engineering to entrepreneurship, they often succeed not because they mastered a new technical skill overnight, but because they brought their human strengths with them, their ability to tell a story, to lead with authenticity, to connect with people. These portable strengths travel better than any degree. Let's take creativity, often dismissed as a nice to have. Creativity is not confined to art studios or music stages. It's what drives innovation in tech, marketing strategies in business, curriculum design in education, and solution making in social work. It helps people see beyond the obvious, find new angles, and respond to challenges with imagination rather than fear. Or consider adaptability, a skill we all claimed to understand until the world changed overnight. Those who thrived weren't necessarily the most educated or the most experienced, but the ones who could pivot, think on their feet, stay calm, and lead through uncertainty. Again, adaptability is not field-specific, it's human-specific. Emotional intelligence is another quiet superpower. The ability to understand and manage emotions, both yours and others, plays a role in nearly every context, from resolving conflict in the boardroom to calming a distressed client, from motivating a team to navigating cultural differences. It's a skill that turns a manager into a leader, a co-worker into a trusted ally, and a business into a brand people actually care about. Let's not forget storytelling. At first glance, it seems more suited to novelists and filmmakers. But today, everyone from marketers to politicians to CEO relies on storytelling, because data informs, but stories inspire. Numbers speak to the mind, but stories move the heart. And no matter what you do, if you can move people, you can lead them. The beauty of these ignored skills lies not only in their versatility, but also in their resilience. They don't become obsolete. Programming languages get outdated, tools change, markets crash, but communication, empathy, resilience, critical thinking, these evolve with you. They sharpen with experience, they deepen with age. Still, they are rarely taught with intention. No one says, let's take a semester on how to be emotionally intelligent under pressure, or let's assess your storytelling skills in a science presentation. But in the real world, those are often the exact things that determine whether someone listens to you, follows you, or remembers you. So while technical knowledge may get your foot in the door, it's these ignored, transferable skills that determine how far you go after that. They are your passport, not just to success in a single job, but to meaningful impact across multiple roles, industries, and even identities. In a world that's always changing, the smartest thing you can do is invest in the skills that go with you, grow with you, and help you remain not just employable, but unforgettable. And more often than not, those are the very skills the world never taught you to value. But you should, because they are your hidden strength, relevant anywhere, recognized everywhere. Influence is often misunderstood. People tend to associate it with loudness, power, status, or the spotlight. But true influence, the kind that changes hearts, minds, and behavior, often works in silence. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't announce itself. Instead, it quietly shapes environments, conversations, and decisions through subtle, often ignored skills. We've been conditioned to think that impact comes from dominance, assertiveness, or an impressive title. But watch closely, and you'll notice that the most respected, trusted, and followed individuals in any space are not always the loudest. They're often the ones who listen deeply, speak thoughtfully, and carry a calm presence. They don't always lead from the front. Sometimes they lead by making others feel seen, safe, and significant. That's silent influence. And it comes from mastering the skills people rarely talk about. Take listening, not hearing, but truly listening. the kind of listening that makes someone feel fully understood, even if they never find the perfect words. Most people underestimate it, thinking it's passive or secondary to speaking, but real listening is one of the most disarming, powerful things you can offer. It makes people open up. It builds trust faster than persuasion ever could. And it plants the seed of influence without force. Then there's observation, the ability to pick up on what's not being said, the glance someone avoids, the tone that shifts mid-sentence, the energy of a room changing. These invisible cues often carry more weight than the words themselves. The people who notice them, who sense before they speak, are the ones who know when to step forward, when to hold back, and when to guide without ever claiming control. Empathy is another underestimated tool of silent influence. We often think of it as something emotional or soft, but empathy is strategic. It's the ability to understand people's motivations, fears, dreams, and limitations. When you truly understand someone, you don't just respond, you connect. You don't just inform, you inspire, and you don't just lead, you resonate. That resonance builds loyalty, commitment, and influence far deeper than any command. Even timing is a form of silent skill, knowing when to speak, when to pause, when to support, and when to challenge. This doesn't come from books. It comes from emotional intelligence, experience, and the ability to feel a moment instead of just calculating it. People who master timing influence decisions without even appearing to push them. Two is a powerful force. We're often told to sell ourselves, be bold, and take credit. But sometimes the most influential people are the ones who lift others up, who lead without ego, who win hearts not through charisma, but through quiet competence and consistency. These are the people others trust, confide in, and follow, not because they're loud, but because they're real. In today's hyper-competitive, high-noise world, it's easy to believe that the only way to stand out is to shout louder than everyone else. But ironically, the people who create lasting impact are often those who speak less but say more, who act with integrity, notice the little things, and build human bridges with their invisible skills. You've seen this in action. A person walks into a room and immediately makes others feel comfortable. No speech, no grand gestures, just presence, or someone who, with a few thoughtful words, shifts the entire mood of a conversation. Or the quiet colleague who never pushes themselves into the center, but always ends up being the person everyone turns to for advice. That's not luck, that's silent influence, and it's built on the skills we rarely reward: self-awareness, emotional clarity, the ability to stay calm under pressure, the intuition to say the right thing at the right time. These are not noisy traits, but they leave a lasting echo. The truth is, influence isn't about having the biggest platform, it's about how you make people feel. It's about the space you create around you, the safety, the inspiration, the clarity you offer without needing to be the center of attention. So if you've ever felt that your quiet strengths don't matter, that your deep listening, your empathy, your emotional sensitivity, your thoughtful presence are somehow less important than loud ambition or flashy skills, think again. Because silent influence is real and it's powerful. It doesn't show up in applause but in trust, not in spotlight but in legacy. The world may not always recognize these ignored skills in the beginning, but over time they're the ones that build the deepest connections, create the most loyal followings, and change the most lives. Without making noise, life doesn't follow a script. Careers change, relationships shift, circumstances fall apart, dreams evolve, and in the middle of all this unpredictability, one thing determines whether you stay stuck or rise again: your ability to reinvent yourself. Reinvention isn't about changing your identity overnight or abandoning who you were. It's about tapping into the skills that have always been within you, even if they were never praised, measured, or rewarded. And often those are the ignored skills. When people talk about reinvention, they often focus on external things: new jobs, new roles, new environments. But real reinvention is internal. It's about adjusting how you think, speak, behave, respond, and grow in a new direction. And this is where ignored skills become your secret strength. You don't need to start from zero. You need to start from what's been quietly growing inside you all along. Think about resilience. It's not taught in classrooms. There's no certificate for getting back up after failure, or for carrying yourself with dignity after being underestimated. Yet that quiet strength, built through setbacks, forms the bedrock of reinvention. When life challenges you to pivot, it's your emotional endurance, your ability to stay calm, to learn fast, to trust yourself again, that carries you forward. Adaptability is another key player. Reinvention isn't a one-time event, it's a process of becoming, and to grow, you need to be flexible, not just in your actions, but in your mindset. The ability to unlearn old patterns, to stay open to feedback, to try something new even when it feels uncomfortable. That's adaptability. It's not flashy, it doesn't win awards, but it transforms lives. Communication also plays a critical role. When you shift into a new version of yourself, you need to express it. You need to tell your story in a new voice, to explain your vision with confidence, and to share your transformation with clarity. Many people stay trapped in outdated identities because they don't know how to speak for their evolving self. But when you can communicate with honesty and purpose, people begin to see the new you, even before you fully believe it yourself. Self-awareness is another deeply underrated skill that becomes essential during reinvention. Before you change anything externally, you need to look inward. Who are you really? What do you value now, not 5 years ago? What strengths have you hidden? What parts of yourself have you ignored to fit in? These questions don't have obvious answers, but asking them requires courage, reflection, and honesty, qualities that don't show up on a resume but shape the direction of your life. Then comes emotional intelligence. Reinvention can feel lonely. People may not understand your new path. Doubts will creep in. Rejections may happen. Emotional intelligence allows you to stay grounded through this chaos. It helps you manage self-doubt, respond rather than react, and separate your worth from other people's opinions. It reminds you that you're allowed to outgrow people, places, and even parts of yourself. Creativity is perhaps the most underestimated reinvention tool of all. When you're trying to redefine your life, you need to imagine a version of yourself that doesn't yet exist. That takes vision, that takes playfulness. That takes the courage to create something from nothing. A new habit, a new business, a new way of showing up. And creativity isn't just about painting or writing. It's about solving problems with originality, seeing opportunity where others see dead ends, and bringing new energy into old routines. All of these skills, resilience, adaptability, communication, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and creativity, are rarely taught as essentials, but they are the quiet engines of transformation. They are the skills that allow someone to go from being labeled a failure to becoming a pioneer. From being stuck in one career to flourishing in another, from surviving to thriving. The beauty of these ignored skills is that they're already within you. They're shaped by your life experience, your struggles, your reflections, your daily choices. They don't need permission to grow, they need recognition, and once you recognize them, you realize that reinvention isn't reserved for the lucky, the famous, or the privileged. It's available to anyone who decides to honor the parts of themselves they were once told didn't matter. Because the truth is, those parts often hold the blueprint to your next chapter. In a world where change is constant, the greatest asset you have isn't stability, it's your ability to evolve, and that evolution doesn't come from what the world taught you to value. It comes from the skills you are quietly building in the background, the ones nobody applauded, but which now carry the power to transform your entire life. That's why ignored skills aren't just useful. They're revolutionary. Thanks for watching.